also really happy to have with us someone that we've known for a while and had the pleasure of working with in a previous life. Adam Duinick, who has been appointed the chair of the Metropolitan Council pending Senate approval. And he is a current Met Council member representing District 8. He has been on the Transportation Committee of the Met Council, and so he's very familiar with what's going on at the Metropolitan Council. He has also been executive director of Win Minnesota, an organization that fundraises for Democrats in state and federal races. And previously, as we knew him, he was the legislative and political director for the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 49. So we're very happy to have him. He brings a real wealth of knowledge and experience to this position, and we're looking forward to working with him as he leads the Metropolitan Council. So let's welcome Adam Duinick.
Thank you, Margaret. I was going to introduce myself, but Margaret did such a great job of doing so. It's really great to be here, and as I like to tell people when I'm in a friendly audience, as chair of the Met Council, it's great to be in a friendly room, being well received. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking a little bit more in depth about what the governor's proposal is as it relates to transit, since he didn't touch on as much of it this morning. He's focused more on the roads piece, and so I wanted to touch a little bit about that and talk about some of the cases that we're trying to make around the region, at the legislature, and why it's necessary to build out the transit system in the next 10 years and accelerate what we see as a build-out that's going to occur, but to do it faster. A couple of things to start with. The principles behind the governor's plan are pretty clear, and that is we need a serious problem needs a serious long-term solution, and what we need is a stable and reliable funding source. Right now, our transit system is funded from a number of different sources: fares, fare recovery, the motor vehicle sales tax, federal funds, and the state general fund appropriation. And so we've been trying to describe the way we look at the funding going forward is it's, again, a stable and a reliable funding source in the sales tax, something that we can count on year in and year out, that will grow with inflation and continue to allow us to grow the system. And what we've had over the past is an unpredictable funding source, which is some years the general fund is there, other years it's not, other years it's reduced. Some bonding bills, there's money for bonding projects that'll help build out our transitway system, and other years there's not. And the county's Transit Improvement Board has their reliable funding source, which we work really closely with them on their plan, and we're grateful for their leadership. But there's still, in the way of developing future transitways, busways, light rail lines, and so forth, the state's share is a really important component of that. We put up 10% on the capital side, and then have to figure out how to fund half of the operating as well. So what the governor's proposal does is it raises $2.8 billion over 10 years, and it will allow us to grow and build out and grow the 20 additional transitway lines, as well as an important investment in our current busway system. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. Just to make sure everyone in this room understands, there's a lot of conversation about light rail lines and how expensive they are and what a cost that is long-term ongoing. And we're firm believers at the council that light rail works in certain corridors where it makes sense, where it's not economically inefficient to have a busway or have other modes serve that corridor. But we also understand there's a limit to how much light rail expansion there will be in this region in terms of space and right-of-way. So out of those 20 transitway corridors I mentioned, it's likely that 16 or 17 of them will be busways. So I'm very quick to make the point that what we're talking about is expanding the bus service in this region, which is, again, making better use and actually working closely in partnership with MnDOT to use the roads better. And then on the basic bus service, that's something that we've developed a little bit more from the governor's proposal from 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we had an idea of how much funding we would have and what that would mean for the basic bus service. But since then, we've taken a good look at, with our regional service improvement plan, which routes we would increase the frequency with, going from 20 or 30-minute routes to 15 or even more frequency than that. Which parts of the region don't currently have coverage, and how do we provide coverage to some of those regions? So we've done a good amount of drilling down on how to provide additional basic bus service in those communities as well. And we'll work very closely with the suburban transit providers as well. They would receive a portion of the additional revenue too. There's a way in which we work with them on their route planning with us as well. And then to some of the other important additions to the transit system. One thing that we get in the conversation a lot of times at Met Council and Metro Transit is, what you really want is more than what we need. But when you look at what the transit service is today, if you have to go either sit on a bench or oftentimes stand next to a pole to wait for a bus service, we're going to think about adding, hundreds and potentially thousands of additional shelters and amenities and better signage. And what this is about is, again, modernizing the transit service to both attract new riders and provide better service to the riders we currently have. We just have been in such a fiscally constrained environment that we've not been able to do some of that basic upkeep. And to us, we think of that as the basics. Some people say, well, you're going to fund more than we need. That's sort of the extras. Again, no, I would say that's the basics of what we need. And why is investing in the transit system so important? To me, it's a couple things. One, it's to plan for the growth that we expect to occur, which the governor kind of touched on this morning. 1 million additional people in the state and 800,000 here in the region over the next 30 years. And if we're going to have that amount of growth in population and jobs and being able to move people around, we're going to need a transit system that's first class. Secondly, to remain economically competitive with our peer regions. And we've seen what they've done in their transit system, both in terms of how much investment they're willing to put into it and how quickly they're able to build out their transit systems as well. And that includes attracting and retaining some of the top talent, both workforce-wise and business-wise. The trends are clear. Travel behavior is changed significantly over the last 10 years, and there's a significant demand for transit service and an appetite for a lot of households to go from 2 cars to 1 car and that sort of thing, in addition to serving, again, the transit-dependable riders that we have to serve. So in the end, I'd just like to reiterate to people, this isn't just about moving buses around or moving products around. It's about people and people's lives and how we can have a community here that has a strong transit system that works well with the transportation system. And I just reiterate the governor's message this morning that we need everybody in this room to help make that happen and help keep this conversation going in the coming months. And I'll be very involved in that, so will Charlie, and I know that the Transportation Alliance will as well. So it's a real pleasure to be here, and I look forward to some questions.
Well, the real question is how the Minnesota Go, which was a 50-year visioning exercise, and which happened about 3 years ago, and I was very fortunate to be a business member of that advisory committee, and we adopted the vision of the Minnesota Go to be the vision of the agency about a year ago, and that is that we are more than just a highway department. It is a multimodal system, and the vision is to maximize the health of the people, the environment, and the economy. That transportation isn't about just individual silos, but it is about the overall collective health of our state. And the fact is, it is more than just highways and bridges. And I think the fact that Minnesota Go involves Metropolitan Transit also involves Greater Minnesota Transit. The governor's budget does propose $120 million of additional funding to be dedicated to Minnesota Transit, and Minnesota Transit funding has actually increased over the past few years because of the funding that comes through the MVEST funding, and these vehicles is higher than what had originally been projected back in those days. There is an aviation proposals to help spend the $11 million that is accumulated in the aviation fund for pavements of part of our 135 airports that we have in the state of Minnesota. There is a vision for passenger rail to keep the planning going. There's a vision for bike and ped. The governor has advocated $75 million of additional general fund money over the 10-year period for safe routes to schools, as well as some of the bike infrastructure. That's not counting some of the bike and ped that is already built into municipalities, counties, and the DNR and some of our own road work. So I think it is very much of a multimodal vision. I think the budget reflects that, and I think that, of course, there's always more that could be done, but to the extent that Adam and I actually have a common message, it's about moving people and goods and services throughout the metro and the state, and the fact that when you have freight rail that's spilling into trucks on highways, or congestion in the Mississippi rivers, so it's causing more congestion in railroads. It is all tied together, and I think the more awareness we have of that, the better.